This is the story of a woman who was murdered while the police did nothing. Neighbors called the police 12 times. Each call ignored, each plea dismissed. Instead of sending help, they said, "We have no units available, let them handle it themselves." This is not just a story about a killer, it's about a system that allowed it to happen. Before we dive into this shocking story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our videos. If you are already subscribed, thank you so much for your support, it means the world to us. Let's get started. Come when you're killed. This chilling phrase, often joked about by police, reveals a brutal truth. The state ignores people begging for protection. The story of Vera Pekhteleva from northern Russia turned this dark saying into reality. For hours, she pleaded for help as threats closed in. No one came. Why does such indifference thrive? To understand, we must start from the beginning, because in our world today, silence isn't just complicity, it's the greatest crime of all. What do you think? Why does this keep happening? Comment below. Vera Pekhteleva was born on September 24, 1997, in Kemerovo region. She attended school at the LUM, where she regularly participated in regional and city events. Her artistic talents shone when she won first place at the Rainbow Festival. Vera loved dancing and was a member of the vocal group Kvosc. Her parents, especially her mother Oksana, took great pride in her musical achievements. Naturally, when Vera finished school, Oksana expected her to enroll at the University of Culture, given her obvious talent and potential for a music career. However, Vera surprised everyone by applying instead to Cuba's State Technical University of Kovo. She chose to study economic security and excelled in her studies, dreaming of a career fighting economic crimes with the police department. Vera's parents divorced when she was young, but she maintained a warm relationship with her father, Eugene. She frequently visited his new family, even joining them for vacations. Both her original and father's new family treated each other with mutual respect, providing Vera with positive examples of family relationships. One day, Vera met Vladislav Kanis, who struck her as a very handsome and charming young man. He was cheerful and polite, and the two began dating in 2017. Both of their families lived in the same apartment building in Kiselev, in the Kovo region, and had known each other for years. Vera's parents, like others in the community, were aware of Vladislav's difficult past. His mother had left him as a child to start a new life with another man, leaving him in his father's care. Later, Vladislav's father committed a crime, and, after being convicted, took his own life in front of his son, shooting himself with a shotgun. The horrific nature of this event left a deep mark on Vladislav's psyche. While many people pitied Vladislav for his traumatic upbringing, Vera's parents had serious concerns about their daughter's relationship with him. They wanted a brighter future for Vera, who was talented and ambitious, whereas Vladislav had a troubled personality and no clear aspirations. They warned Vera that a young man from such a broken home might bring more harm than good into her life. However, Vera, blinded by affection, ignored their warnings and continued seeing Vladislav in secret. The couple kept their relationship extremely private. Vera never posted photos with Vladislav on her Instagram, and even her closest friends knew little about their romance. At the time, she saw no reason to worry, but her parents' fears would later prove tragically justified. Vera and Vladislav continued their relationship despite the growing tensions. They spent their time together at various social gatherings, house parties, hookah lounges, and entertainment spots, while Vera kept their romance mostly private. Vladislav would sometimes post pictures of them together on his social media, making their connection visible to others. Their friend Kemerovo later recalled how the couple frequently argued but always made up quickly, brushing off conflicts as if they were insignificant. Vera's parents had hoped their daughter would eventually end things with Vladislav, but instead, she simply stopped talking about him at home. He no longer accompanied her to family events, and their photos together became rare. She deliberately kept the relationship hidden, avoiding her parents' disapproving lectures about how Vladislav was wrong for her. To them, he was not just an unsuitable match, they believed he was exploiting Vera. They saw him as someone clinging to her stability and future prospects, using her to escape his own troubled past. Yet despite their warnings, Vera remained with him, unaware of how dangerous his instability would become. The situation grew more strained as Vladislav's behavior became increasingly unpredictable. What had once seemed like typical relationship ups and downs now carried a darker undercurrent. Vera, still convinced she could handle him, ignored the warning signs. Meanwhile, her parents watched helplessly, their worst fears slowly being realized. The couple's arguments grew more intense, and the reconciliations no longer erased the tension between them. Something was shifting, something Vera refused to acknowledge, until it was too late. Vera's parents planned to help their only daughter with an apartment and future work. Indeed, everything in the girl's life was going well, which could not be said about her boyfriend. He dropped out of school after 9th grade and did not want to study anymore. He was also reluctant to work, earning small amounts occasionally through acquaintances. Even the room in the dormitory where Vera and Vlad lived for about a year, paid for by Vera. Once in a conversation with her mother, then it hit her that Vlad didn't need her, he was just using her. The realization came like a slap. All those years, what she thought was love was just dependency. He couldn't live without her, not because he loved her, but because she was convenient, a tool, a resource. Over time, Vlad's behavior grew increasingly possessive. He became jealous of Vera's friends, forbade her from going out alone, and obsessively followed her outside their home. Vera repeatedly tried reasoning with him, explaining that trust, understanding were essential to avoid constant arguments. However, these discussions proved futile. The couple eventually broke up. In November 2019, Vera's mother finally heard the words she'd long waited for. Vera called to say she and Vlad were separating. Her mother felt immense relief, hoping her daughter had finally seen Vlad for who he truly was. After more than 3 turbulent years together, they parted ways, with Vera moving to a different dormitory. According to Mara Tokara, Vera's close friend, Vera rarely complained about Vlad, though she recently confessed their fights had become more frequent and sometimes turned physical. In a frank conversation with her mother, Vera shared intimate details about their relationship that revealed Vlad's manipulative nature, confirming her parents' worst suspicions about the young man's true character. On January 13, 2020, 23-year-old Vera Pekhteleva made the decision to finally end her relationship with Vladislav Kanis. Around 6 p.m., she arrived at Vladislav's apartment at 28 Leningradsky Prospect to collect her belongings and sever ties completely. Vera intended only to pack her things, but Vlad had other plans. He had prepared a romantic dinner with a carefully set table in an attempt to reconcile. At first, their conversation remained calm as they drank alcohol. Vera only sipped lightly, while Vlad consumed multiple shots. As the evening progressed, Vera noticed their discussion was devolving into drunken chaos. When she tried to leave, Vlad's demeanor changed dramatically. His voice rose to a high-pitched tone, often shouting as he hurled accusations of infidelity at Vera. He called her vile names and repeatedly insisted he knew she was seeing someone else. Throughout this ordeal, Vera maintained contact with a friend through voice messages, keeping them updated on the situation. In a disturbing turn, Vlad also sent messages from Vera's phone, instructing her friend not to wait for her or come to the apartment, claiming he needed to deal with his friend on his own. The night that began with Vera's attempt to leave peacefully was taking a dangerous turn. When Vera stopped answering messages, her friend didn't worry at first. This couple fought and made up often. It seemed like just another fight. Later, Vlad said in an interview, "I told her I wanted us to be together again. I said I knew she was seeing someone else. She got very angry. She swore at me, then hit me. 5 kicks between my legs and 8 slaps to my face. But her hits didn't hurt me. I didn't feel any pain from her blows. However, when she kicked me between my legs, I felt physical pain. It made me angry. Specifically, it made me angry that she denied the fact that she was dating another guy." In the early morning of January 14th, 2020, the residents of Building 28 were awakened by a woman's screams from an apartment on the 7th floor. Neighbors of Vladislav Kuz sounded the alarm when the noise from behind the walls began to be heard, which turned into desperate cries for help. Concerned residents of the building began to call the police, but the law enforcement agencies explained there were no available teams at the moment. For over an hour, the front desk and emergency services received calls, and despite being able to hear the victims' desperate cries in the background, the staff did not rush to dispatch assistance to the scene. The yelling continued as time went by. Other floor residents also stepped forward, and several of them called the emergency services to implore them to send a squad right away. The woman dispatcher assured me she had already passed the information to the Lenin department of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and that police were on their way, but this wasn't true. After a couple hours, the screams suddenly stopped. A loud male voice outside the door clearly said, "Vera, I'm sorry. I love you very much." Finally, the neighbors took matters into their own hands and broke down the door, but it was too late. They found Vera in a pool of blood, her injuries too severe to survive after enduring hours of torture. The young girl had died. What truly happened that terrible night at 28 Leningradsky Prospect? Where were the police who could have saved Vera Pekhtelava's life? From the beginning, Vladislav Kuz had no intention of letting Vera leave. Despite her attempts to end the relationship, his obsession and violent tendencies ultimately led to this tragic outcome. The system's failure to respond to multiple emergency calls only compounded the horror of that night. Just minutes before Vera arrived, Vladislav spoke to his brother on the phone and confessed he would kill her. His brother immediately rushed to Leningradsky Prospect but couldn't stop the crime. The apartment door was locked, and women's screams were already coming from inside. When neighbors finally broke down the door, Vladislav's brother was the first to enter the blood-soaked apartment. He described a scene of chaos. Belongings scattered everywhere. Vera lying on the floor with a reddish-orange face and blood around her mouth. Vladislav was in the bathroom holding a knife and talking to himself. Neighbors called police again, this time reporting a murder. Only then did an investigative team finally respond, in his own words, about the attack. "I wanted the silence to come. I didn't think about her suffering. She screamed, insulted me during our conflict. Striking her didn't please me. I didn't like that she was yelling. I wanted her to be quiet." The killer remained at the scene, repeating his confession while waiting for authorities. Having committed the horrific act, He made no attempt to flee and surrendered to operatives. Without resistance, the girl was dead, her killer apprehended. All that remained was to await punishment and retribution. Yet the central question persists. Why did Vera's neighbors spend over 3 hours desperately trying to save her, while those duty-bound to protect her failed to act? Let us revisit those terrible hours when her ex-boyfriend methodically carried out the murder as police demonstrated shocking indifference. At 4:52 a.m., the first emergency call came from the residence at Leningradsky, Prospect 28, reporting violent fighting in apartment 738. The caller described a woman screaming for help. By 4:55 a.m., at least 15 concerned neighbors had gathered outside. The call reached duty officers Major Mikhail Bischoff and Captain Dmitry Titin, but no units were dispatched. The reason? A week-long training exercise had left the department. Critically understaffed. Dispatchers explained by phone that such exercises typically involved 60 to 70 of personnel, leaving nobody available to respond to emergencies. A systemic failure with fatal consequences. At 4:58 a.m., Major Mikhail Balashov, the shift supervisor, complained to a fellow officer that he had no one to send to the emergency call. All squads were allegedly busy with no available personnel. 10 minutes later, he made another call requesting backup, but was again refused. There was simply no one to dispatch. Meanwhile, desperate neighbors continued flooding emergency lines with calls, their nerves frayed. Internal affairs dispatchers also attempted to coordinate a response, but encountered endless excuses. Traffic police inspectors refused, claiming it wasn't their jurisdiction. Some officers said they had no fuel. Others blamed flat tires. An hour and a half passed without action. Despite being unable to send anyone to Leningradsky Prospect, Major Balashov managed to dispatch a unit at 5:10 a.m. Not to save Vera, but to retrieve the body of an elderly man, all while Vera was still screaming for help. At 5:21 a.m., Balashov went off duty, replaced by Captain Dmitry Triton. The captain also received the distress calls about the ongoing violence, but did nothing. By 5:28 a.m., Officer Maria Dunova was heard laughing on the phone, casually remarking that no one was available to respond, even as about 15 neighbors were attempting to break into the apartment themselves. She noted the girl was still screaming before ending the call with, "All right, everything's fine, it's okay." Vera could have been saved. There was time. The killer took his time torturing her, but the police took even longer to act. At 6:35 a.m., with still no officers on scene, neighbors finally found a metal crowbar and forced the door open. Inside, they discovered Vera's lifeless body. Blood coated the floors and walls. Only after the neighbors broke in and confirmed the murder did police finally arrive too late. The neighbors called emergency services again, their voices filled with desperation. "An hour and a half ago, we called for help. Still no one has arrived," they said. The girl was screaming, "Help! Save me!" But no one came to help or save her. We had to break down the door ourselves. Now, the girl is already dead. What are we supposed to do? It's particularly telling that when emergency services finally received a report about the girl's death, it took them between 15 to 50 minutes to arrive at the scene. Charges were brought against 23-year-old Vladislav Kanaz under the article for murder committed with particular cruelty. The trial proceedings in Vera Pekhtelava's case began in February 2021. In the courtroom, Vladislav Kanaz presented his version of events, admitting he had hit Vera 4 times before strangling her. During the hearing, He claimed he never intended to kill Vera, saying he had wrapped a wire from an iron around her neck just to scare her and put her to sleep. He insisted that by the time he realized what had happened, it was already too late. This account directly contradicted the testimony of neighbors who had heard Vera's desperate, heartbreaking screams for 3.5 hours. The case was only reclassified to reflect the full brutality of the crime. After Vera's parents pushed for justice and the story gained public attention, Vladislav Kanas's crime was now prosecuted under Part 2 of Article 105 of the Russian Criminal Code. Murder with particular cruelty. The charges against the police officers involved were also strengthened. In addition to the 2 officers already facing prosecution, 3 more policewomen were brought to account for their indifference to the woman's screams they had heard over the phone. According to the lawyer representing Vera's family, the forensic examination revealed that injuries had been inflicted over an extended period of time. The forensic expert's report painted a horrifying picture. Vladislav had left no part of Vera's body untouched. The pathologists documented a terrible array of injuries, bruises, abrasions, cuts, and lacerations covering her entire body. Nearly half of all the blows had been concentrated on the young girl's face, demonstrating the particular cruelty of the attack. The evidence clearly showed this was not a quick act of violence, but a prolonged and brutal assault. The forensic examinations revealed the horrifying extent of Vladislav Kanas's brutality. He wasn't content with just using his hands and feet. He escalated 2 heavy objects before finally grabbing a knife. The evidence showed Kanas first cut Vera's body twice with 1 knife, then deliberately switched to a sharper blade to inflict 5 additional wounds. This wasn't a crime of passion or sudden violence. It was calculated torment. Kanas took sick pleasure in prolonging Vera's suffering, methodically inflicting pain rather than killing her quickly. The aftermath was so severe that even skilled morticians needed hours of preparation to make Vera's body presentable for burial. Despite the high-necked funeral dress carefully chosen to conceal the damage, the visible injuries still bore silent witness to the unimaginable cruelty she endured. The violence was so extreme that it couldn't be fully hidden, even with professional embalming and cosmetic work. A month after the murder, authorities opened a criminal negligence case against 2 police officials: Mel Bishop, head of the duty shift at the Leninsky Police Department, and Dmitry Triton, the senior operational duty officer, charged under Article 293 of the Criminal Code. They stood accused of failing to respond to multiple emergency calls about a screaming woman in an apartment on Leningradskaya Street. Both officers refused to cooperate with investigators or admit any wrongdoing. Their defense claimed the department's investigative team was already occupied with another case involving a male corpse when the calls about Vera came in. They also cited logistical issues, including a police vehicle that had run out of fuel at 3 a.m., over an hour before the first distress calls about Vera's situation began coming in at 4 a.m. Shockingly, as of March 2021, these officers remained on active duty, still working in law enforcement despite the ongoing investigation. They continued to deny any responsibility for the failed response, showing no remorse for their inaction that left Vera to suffer for hours before her brutal death. The case highlighted systemic failures in police response protocols and accountability measures, leaving many to wonder how many other victims might suffer due to such negligence. The case sparked widespread public outrage, prompting human rights activists to demand proper justice. In July 2020, the Kovo court finally delivered its verdict. Vladislav Kanas was sentenced to 17 years in a maximum security prison, significantly less than the 23 years prosecutors had sought. The court also ordered him to pay 1.5 million rubles in compensation to Vera's grieving parents. Vera's family was shocked to discover that the charges had been quietly reduced from murder with particular cruelty to a lesser offense before reaching trial. No official explanation was given for this change, though unofficially. A prosecutor's office employee suggested the more severe charge required at least 100 stab wounds, an arbitrary threshold that ignored the prolonged, sadistic nature of Vera's suffering. In his final statement to the court, Canas showed no remorse, instead blaming Vera for provoking him and claiming he never intended the tragic outcome. This final insult compounded the family's anguish, as the legal system's failures mirrored the police's earlier indifference, leaving them with neither full justice nor proper closure for their daughter's brutal, preventable death. Vera Pekhtelava's father remained deeply unsatisfied with the legal outcome. He believed Vladislav Canas received a reduced sentence due to the ongoing investigation into police negligence, which was still pending at the time of the trial. The family planned to appeal the verdict, seeking to increase the punishment to life imprisonment. In the summer of 2023, 5 police officers faced sentencing for their failure to respond to Vera's pleas for help. Major Mikhail Belashov, Captain Dmitry Triton, and dispatcher Maria Pomara received 2-year suspended sentences, while dispatchers Maria Duneva and Kristina Udinseva were given 1.5 years. The case had drawn significant public attention, particularly due to the shocking inaction of law enforcement. However, the story took a disturbing turn when reports emerged that Vladislav Canas, convicted of Vera's brutal murder, might be pardoned. In 2023, it was revealed that he had been transferred to military forces operating in Ukraine. Vera's mother discovered a photo of him in military uniform online, prompting her to contact the Federal Penitentiary Service. They confirmed that in April, Canas had been sent to Rostov region under the jurisdiction of the military. Relatives feared he had signed a military contract, effectively securing his freedom. Parents learned that Canas had been pardoned by presidential decree, releasing him from further punishment and erasing his criminal record. Even more devastating, he was also relieved of the obligation to pay the 1.5 million ruble compensation to Vera's family. This final injustice left Vera's parents in disbelief, as the man who tortured and murdered their daughter walked free rather than punished for his crimes. The case became a grim symbol of systemic failure, where both law enforcement and judicial institutions betrayed an innocent victim and her grieving family. Vera Pekhtelava's father remained deeply dissatisfied with the outcome. He believed Vladislav's sentence had been reduced due to the ongoing police negligence case still under review. The family planned to appeal, seeking to increase the punishment to life imprisonment. In summer 2023, 5 police officers were sentenced for their failure to respond. Major Mikhail Balashov, Captain Dmitry Triton, and dispatcher Maria Pomara received 2-year suspended sentences, while dispatchers Maria Duneva and Kristina Udinseva were given 1.5 years. The case had drawn significant public attention. Due to the authorities' inaction, however, the situation took a shocking turn when reports emerged that Vladislav Canas might be pardoned. In 2023, he was transferred to military forces in Ukraine. Vera's mother discovered photos of him in military uniform online and confirmed through official channels that he had been sent to Rostov region under military jurisdiction. It was confirmed that Canas had been pardoned by presidential decree, releasing him from further punishment and clearing his criminal record. He was also exempted from paying the court-ordered compensation to Vera's family. Authorities later clarified the compensation payments were only suspended during his military service. In May 2024, the negligent police officers were ordered to pay Vera's family 700,000 rubles, far less than the amount originally sought. The case highlighted systemic failures in addressing domestic violence and protecting victims. While Karnas may claim to be atoning through military service, Vera's family continues to live with their unimaginable loss, denied the justice they deserved. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe the channel and like the video.